Hey everybody! For today's lesson, we are going to be turning our contour drawings into wire sculptures. Now, first things first, what are these two terms that I've just introduced? Blind contour is a 2D method of drawing in one continuous line, and wire sculptures are 3D forms created with wire. You can see both of these demonstrated in the images above. We see one blind contour drawing of a horse from the front, spreading its legs, drinking some water maybe. And then we see a wire sculpture from Alexander Calder. This horse might be in motion, it might be standing still. It kind of leaves us wondering. Now let's talk a little bit more about blind contour drawing. Now in this method of drawing, you are looking very closely at the object that you're drawing, and you're not looking at your paper. So your eyes are tracing the contours of your subject while your hand moves in tandem. But you're not watching what you're doing, so sometimes you can lose track of where things are. You see how in these faces, our eyes and noses are kind of skewed out of the regular realm. But it ends up being like a very intuitive kind of drawing, like Linus Sheep shows us here. Now a little bit more about wire sculpture. It has a very similar look to blind contour drawing, but it's in a 3D space. It moves, it has form. There are a couple examples here, one from Sten Hoyland. He's showing us a hand with a coffee cup. Now this is a little bit 3D. We see the arches of this coffee cup coming out towards us. We see the layers of the hand, but he's basically drawing in air. Now with his example from Ben Baker, this object is mounted on a wooden platform, and he uses different weights of wire to achieve different effects with this octopus. The bigger, like outside lines are done with a thicker wire, and the suction cups are done with a thinner wire. Now some differences between blind contour and wire sculpture. With your blind contour, you've got a single line. It's a flat image, and it's done blind. You don't see what you're doing as you're doing it, and you only have one perspective to work from because it's a flat image. Whereas with the wire sculpture, again, you have a continuous line of your wire, but this time it's three-dimensional. You're usually looking while you're working with wire. It's very difficult to keep yourself safe and bend the wire the way you need to without looking. And you have multiple perspectives that you can view your artwork from. Because it's inherently a 3D work, you can view it from any angle. So that's something else you have to consider when working with wire sculpture. So we're going to break this project into steps. Step 1 is to pick an object. Now, a few suggestions for what kind of object to pick. You can pick an object that's symbolic. If you want to, send a message with your artwork, pick an object that symbolizes something you want to talk about. Another good thing to pick is something that aligns with your interests or hobbies. If you like to do art, for example, which I'm guessing many of you do, you could pick a paintbrush or some other art making tool. It can also be special or meaningful to you, an object that somebody has passed down to you, something that you're really fond of. Another great object is a cultural or ethnic object, something that might remind you of your background, your family, something like that. Everyday objects are a great thing too. Sometimes we tend to overlook common things. If you remember the Sten Hoyland wire sculpture, he just did a simple coffee cup, but it still was a really, interesting piece of artwork. Something else fun to pick could be something from pop culture, like a toy, an action figure, some sort of box. That can be interesting. But the most important thing is that your object must be three-dimensional. Otherwise, this project doesn't work. Awesome. Step 2 is to start making our contour drawings. First, take some time. Sit with your object, notice all the contours, turn it around, get familiar with it, pick a perspective. Next, as you're drawing, make sure not to look at your paper. Your eyes should stay on your object at all times. Now this can be, something that's hard to do right off the bat if you're really used to looking at your paper as you draw. You can cover your hand with another piece of paper as you draw if you really are struggling to not look. The other thing you have to do is draw in a continuous line. Now this is something that can help you keep track of where you are in your object as you move around the contours of your object. Moving in one continuous line helps you keep track of where you are. Move slowly as well. If you're trying to rush through these contour drawings, they're going to get really out of whack really fast. You're going to lose where you are and your proportions will be way off. And now, of course, our goal is not to be perfectly accurate, but we do still want it to look like our object. Lastly, I want us to pay attention to both the inner and the outer contours of the object. The outer contours are the boundary between your object and everything else in the space. The inner contours refer to the different volumes of your object. Spaces where it, becomes concave or convex, areas where they turn a line, perhaps details on the surface. Those would be the inner contours. Our next step is to look, observe, and compare. Now I have 3 questions here for you to ask yourself about the contour drawings you just made, and try to think about how we can start to turn them into a wire sculpture. So the first question is, what similarities, differences, or other interesting qualities do you notice about your blind contour drawings? Our next question is, how does the medium of drawing change your interpretation of your object? You're taking a 3D object and turning it 2D. How does that change what this object looks like? Does it change its meaning at all? Awesome. Our last question asks, how might you synthesize the 2D and 3D qualities of your drawings and object to create a wire sculpture? Now, real quick, synthesize is kind of a big vocab word. It basically means to combine or blend. How can you put together the 2D and 3D qualities? Now, last but not least, our step 4 is to actually make our wire sculpture. Now, a few tips and tricks before we start. Working with thin wire is much easier than working with thick wire. It's harder to bend and manipulate. You can blend different weights, materials, and colors of wire. You can blend silver and copper. You can blend, different colors. You can blend weights. Now, this is something that we saw a previous artist do. We saw Ben Baker do with his octopus. He had thick wire for the outline and thin wire for the details. When you're bending your wire, you can do this with your hands or with pliers. Your hands can achieve a softer line, a more gradual curve. Pliers are going to help you get some sharp corners and really tuck that wire in tight. Cut your wire with wire cutters. These are important tools to have. And as you're working, wear gloves or tape your fingers. Do things to protect your hands from the sharp corners of the wire. Especially after you cut it, it can be really, really sharp and difficult to work with. Now, last but not least, as you're working with your wire, use both your object and your drawings as references for that sculpture. Make sure to be thinking both 2D and 3D, merging the two in the medium of wire sculpture. All right, and that is it for our lesson today. I hope you had a great time working with blind contour drawings and wire sculpture, and that you got something really fun and interesting out of it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.